Hello everyone, Matt from Model Minutes here and welcome back to the workbench for another unboxing. Today a quick one where I take a look at this, the British Special Air Service Jeep in 1/35 scale from Tamiya. So starting off on the front of the box, I think you can see we've got this rather nice image, which is quite typical of Tamiya boxings, of this Jeep being used by the SAS. A little bit annoyingly, we've got some of the image going over the text, which makes it a little bit difficult to see from a distance, but on the whole, not too bad. We have a series number of 33, and that corresponds with the item code of 35033, which you can see on this thin edge here. We do have information that this consists of a crew of 2, so we get 2 figures, and it's a ready-to-assemble plastic model kit, but cement and paint is not included. The thin edge has another image, but also some information in Japanese, which I can't read, but we have a copyright date of 1974. Take copyright dates with a pinch of salt because they aren't always tooling dates. Flipping onto the other thin edge, we have some other products which are available in the range, and you'll note that there is another Jeep here. We have information that's made in the Philippines, and that is pretty much it. We don't have a great deal of information on this box. Pretty much plain and simple. Good to see. The rear of the box doesn't feature anything, so let's get straight in and see what we've got. Let's start with the paperwork as usual. We have 2 sets of instructions, one in Japanese, which I can't read, so I'll put that to the side, and one in English. We'll look at that in a sec. We do have a tech tips sort of fold out sheet, which gives us extra information on how to use the different tools and how we should be using them if we would like to do so. This is always a great addition to the box, but I'm not going to bother looking into it, and instead we'll move straight on to the instructions. The instructions then look like they're printed in black and white. We have 2 images at the top here, which appear to be real-life images of the actual vehicles. One on the right is armed with light machine guns, whereas the one on the left has heavier armament. We have lots of good information here about the Jeep, and feel free to pause and have a read if you'd like to do so. Flipping over the page then, we've got it as a fold-out booklet, which we'll look at in a sec. But we do have information here about the 2 different variants. Well, I say variants, but it's almost like it's the same Jeep, but you can add either lighter arm version or a heavier armed version. And we do have a breakdown of all the different kinds of equipment which are included in this kit, which is nice to see. We do have some more extra information and images as we go through the build, and other than that, we just start assembling. Paints are called out by a name of a paint, and you can see the exploded diagrams here. We assemble our chassis and our wheels. I believe the wheels may have an element of freely rotating if you glue these parts together correctly, but I'm not going to be too worried about that. We assemble the main parts of our Jeep together, add some extra details and the wheels onto the chassis. We do the bonnet and radiator, and then we finish off the assembly of our vehicle. So not overly complicated. We then come on to our figures, and you can see we've got different painting instructions for our figures depending on how we want to display them. You can see here we've got goggles on the top, on all around the neck. Probably could wear them, I suppose, as well. And then we have our extra equipment. We've got machine guns, we've got jerry cans, we've got anything else. Yep, so ammunition boxes, magazine cases, drum magazine cases, we've got duffel bags and canteens, and they can all be added onto the vehicle in relevant places. And then we come down to painting, and we do have some painting information, but overall seems to be sort of a desert yellow, and then earth and buff colors for weathering. I would prefer to see this in color. I think that would make it a little bit less ambiguous if you're struggling to figure out what's going on, but the wealth of information here is really good. So there's that. Let's move on to the parts. It is worth noting that the inside of the Tamiya box does have some extra information, but it's just health and safety stuff, so I'm not going to look at that. I have already had a look inside this kit because I'm like a child and I just can't not look at my toys. So we've got 3 sprues molded in a desert yellow kind of color, which is more or less kind of accurate probably to how this would have been. So if you didn't want to paint it, you didn't have to. We'll look at, I think we'll look at this one first. The plastic does have a slightly greasy feel to it, but not massively so. The plastic is relatively hard, maybe a little dense, maybe a little brittle, but not too bad, pretty good. The mold quality is really quite nice. Details are reproduced to a good quality. There is a tiny amount of flash in a few little select places, just like, but we're talking tiny, absolutely minuscule, so virtually non-existent flash. There are some mold pips in a few places as well, like here on the steering wheel, which may need to be cut off and trimmed away. So on this one, we've got various elements of our Land Rover and some extra details. Sorry, not Land Rover, Jeep, and some extra details which will be used to complete it. And if we flip over, you can see the details are reproduced on this side as well. But unfortunately, we do have ejector pin marks on some of these surfaces. Hopefully, these are not visible surfaces, and we won't be able to see them in the finished build, but that's a fingers crossed, and I don't know without assembling the kit. So that's that one. On this sprue then, we have our extra details and our wheels, again molded to a pretty nice quality. We do have a slight mold seam around the edge of the tires, if that will show up on the video, which may need a little bit of cleaning up. Tire hubs, fuel cans, and weapons. The weapons look to be molded quite crisply as well. Yeah, the details reproduced are really quite nice, but again we do have some ejector pin marks on this side, which hopefully are not on visible surfaces, but again we will have to see. Yeah, pretty nice. And then the last sprue is a little bit, just a touch more tatty, I would say. You can see we've got some stringing of plastic in a few places. It's hardly noticeable, but I can see it. There's a little bit of flash. Yeah, there's some flash on these parts here and around the edges. I think it's maybe because they're slightly odd shapes, so they're a little bit harder to mold as crisply. Figures have got a mold seam down the outside, and the eyes on the figures look quite sunken in. Which is interesting. I've never seen them quite as sunken as that, but hopefully not too bad on the finished product. They come in different parts. We need to assemble them in their components and pose them as appropriate. But yeah, it does need a little bit of cleaning up for the mold seams. Weapons here look to be molded to a pretty nice quality. And our duffel bags, again, mold seams down the edges of some of these, which just need a little bit of attention to clean up. As we saw on there, it's potentially a 70s tooling, so some of these things are to be expected. But on the whole, level of detail is pretty good and the mold quality is okay. So let's wrap this one up. We had 3 sprues molded to a pretty nice quality. Overall, mold quality is nice, but there is a little bit of flash in a few places and some mold seams which may need addressing, as well as some ejector pins on visible surfaces. But this is potentially a creation of the time that it was created. We have our instructions in black and white. I would prefer to see these in color, but I can't complain about the wealth of information that's in there. A little tech tip sheet, all of which came contained within this relatively nice illustrated box. So as we discussed, 1974 is our copyright date, and from what I can tell online, this is effectively it. It's been released since 1974 as a Special Air Service Jeep. However, we did see on this edge, there is another version of the Jeep, and this is what it's based off of. So they share a common tooling, and that one was first released in 1972. So effectively, we've got some parts in here which are 1972 vintage, and some parts which are 1974. But Tamiya is very much of the mindset of, if it isn't broke, don't try and fix it. So this is pretty much the only 2 boxings you'll have seen with this in, effectively, one with a US crew and one with a SAS crew and the relevant parts to go along with it. They don't tend to mess around and try and re-release them in other ways, so if you had one of these in the 70s, it'll be the exact same kit today. No decals or clear parts or anything, but I don't think that they are probably needed. Perhaps maybe the lights could have been clear parts, but I think with some careful painting you can make them look reasonably representative. So how much did I pay for this? Well, I've got the sticker here and I paid £9.99. That seems to be pretty much the RRP. Tamiya don't really list RRPs on their website, so I have to take like an average from what I see online, and everywhere seems to be selling it for around £9 to £12. So, you know, £9.99 seems to be the most common, so £10. Which, yeah, I think that's all right. I think it's a reasonable price for a 135 scale kit of this, you know, sort of quality level. It's not going to break the bank, and we can play around with it and have different options inside of it. So yeah, not too bad for what we've got inside the box. I picked this one up because I thought that I might do something similar to when I did my anti-tank crew, just a small little scene with them perhaps in the desert somewhere. But yeah, this sort of inspired me to pick up another version and have a go at one of these Tamiya kits, so I can expand my sort of modeling horizons. But yeah, with that, I think it's probably time to leave this video here. Let me know down in the comments what you thought of my unboxing today and if my assessment of this kit was fair. As always, honourable mention to my Model Club members for the extra support they give the channel. If you'd like to join them or support the channel in other ways, full information is below the video. Of course, the best way to support this channel for free though is by subscribing with notifications turned on so you never miss a modelling upload. Finally though, last thing to say is a massive thank you to you for watching this one, and I'll see you on the workbench again next time.